romance readers. I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. Debut author Timothy Janovsky joins me to discuss his queer rom-com, Never Been Kissed. And Timothy and I played two truths and a lie. Enjoy, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, Timothy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It is a pleasure. Congratulations on your debut romance, Never Been Kissed.
Thank you.
How much, if at all, did the 1999 rom-com Never Been Kissed influence the title and or premise of your novel?
Okay, so title, 100%. So I knew going in that Ren was a rom-com aficionado, loved film, and so Drew Barrymore's classic film would be kind of in his arsenal of VHS tapes that he loves. And so that kind of was a no-brainer from the beginning. And I knew he had never been kissed prior to the story starting, so it just completely made sense. As far as the plot, it borrows from To All the Boys I've Loved Before, You've Got Mail. It doesn't borrow really anything from the Drew Barrymore movie other than like getting a second chance at high school love, I would say, because I actually started, when I pitched the book to my editor, the question that I was kind of trying to answer with the book was, what if a YA protagonist didn't get his happy ending in high school? So that was kind of the thread there. And Drew Barrymore in her movie is kind of reliving her high school experience from a more positive perspective. So Never Been Kissed tells the story of Ren Roland. So he's never been kissed, never been in love, but he wants his movie perfect ending more than anything. And so on the night of his 22nd birthday, gets very drunk and very nostalgic, and he ends up sending emails to all the boys he crushed on before coming out of the closet. And he wakes up with one response from Derek Haverford, who is his #1 pre-coming out crush. And through that exchange, he finds out that they're going to be working together at their hometown's vintage drive-in movie theater. And so we got we got forced proximity, we get, estranged friends to lovers, we get a special project that draws them close together. And Ren finally thinks that maybe this is the summer he's going to get his perfect kiss before the credits.
The chemistry between Ren and Derek is such a freaking joy to experience. Did Ren and Derek talk to you? I interview a lot of authors who say that their characters tell them how their love story should play out on the page. So were you taking kind of, messages or instruction from Ren and Derek in your mind, or were you like, hey, I've got a plan here, stop talking to me, I have a plan and this is what you're going to do? What was your approach to writing their relationship?
Yeah, no, that's such an awesome question. So I will say that when I started writing Never Been Kissed, when it came time, I remember writing one really really messy, fun draft, just like goofy little scenes and all this stuff. And in that draft, I wrote a couple chapters. I realized that Ren had never been kissed and was also demisexual. Then I wrote a couple more chapters and realized, okay, wait, he's demisexual, but he doesn't know that. And now I know that. And so I got to retrofit stuff. And so what I wanted to do is, because Ren has this obsession with movies, I went back and read some books on writing a screenplay to learn about the beats of film. And then I retrofitted my favorite scenes from that really messy draft into a screenplay structure. So I knew the big beats of their romance story. So the scene at the very center of the book that happens on the 4th of July, I knew that was going to happen. I knew about the very famous third act breakup that happens in a lot of romances. I knew what that was going to be about. But I will say that the part in a screenplay that they call the part the trailer bait, which is the fun and games, that part was totally Ren and Derek just talking to me, in the sense that letting their kind of natural chemistry dictate what those scenes were going to be for them. And I think the greatest joy is when a character sends you banter. When you write a line of banter, you're like, oh, that's going to be so good. And then someone responds to it in your head and you're like, I'm not sure what that was. We're like, but that's what he's saying now. So I will say they do talk to me, but I will say that I did plan quite a bit in advance in order to then
Okay.
be able to play inside of it.
Got it. When would you hear their voice? Would it be like in the shower? And all of a sudden you hear like whispers, like, oh, I can't wait to get out so I can write that down. Or like, was there a particular time when you could really hear with clarity?
I will say that I come from a theater and an acting background. And
Okay.
so when it comes to writing Ren, because he was my POV
Hmm.
character, and I was kind of, um, uh, utilizing his voice to tell this
Right.
story,
Yeah.
I kind of put myself like as an actor, like, okay, I'm stepping into these shoes. This is the character I'm playing. What are my obstacles? How am I getting over them? So I was actually kind of running an internal dialogue as Ren, and
Right.
like thinking his thoughts. But with Derek, I do think that like a lot of times, um, I did the hard research of going to a lot of drive-in movie theaters to write this book, and I would be like in a snack, like in the snack stand, thinking like, oh, it'd be so interesting if Derek had to work for the night, and what's he bumbling around with, and what's the banter they're having, and then I can hear them, and I think it's a lot of times putting myself into the scene and seeing kind of what would be exciting for me to experience and
Right.
giving my characters that gift.
Right. Well, you've just inspired a few new questions. One is how many drive-in movie theaters did you go to? Because I feel like there's hardly any around. So how many did you visit?
So I'm incredibly lucky, but I visited three, and I
Wow.
visited three based in the Lehigh Valley. There is actually three within driving distance of where I
Okay.
went to college.
Okay.
That's Shankweiler's Drive-In in Orfield, Pennsylvania, Becky's Drive-In, which I believe is in Walnutport, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Then there is a retro-only drive-in movie theater that only shows movies on film, and it's completely volunteer run. And that one is called the Mahoning Drive-In Movie Theater, and that one's in Lehighton, Pennsylvania. And
Wow.
basically, I mean, I had been to Shankweiler's before. I'd gone there during college and with friends and stuff, and my partner. So I knew drive-ins, and especially during COVID, that was the only safe way to see movies. And so we were going to them a lot actually. Um, but yeah, I went to three different ones, and they let me come into the projection booth. They let me, walk around in the concession stand. I took photos and reference photos to send the design team of how I kind of wanted the cover and the characters to look, and I even had a wonderful reader who came to my launch event who made me staff T-shirts, Wiley's
Oh,
Drive-In staff T-shirts, and she replicated them from the book,
that's
which I thought was really
awesome.
cool. And so, yeah, I did the really draining research of going to watch movies and eat popcorn.
It's this romantic feeling I get when I think about a drive-in movie and a drive-in movie theater. So did you learn anything surprising during your research about the inner workings of a drive-in movie theater?
Well, I don't know about the inner workings of a drive-in movie theater particularly, but I
Mhm.
will say I had very strange experience while I was working on maybe past pages or something
Mhm.
late in the editorial process.
Okay.
Is that one of the drive-ins I visited, the Mahoning Drive-In, um, basically, I want to say around 2012, 2010, probably a little earlier than that too. Movies moved from film to digital. And
Right.
so digital projectors are very expensive. And a lot of drive in movie theaters shuttered when that switch happened because they couldn't afford, it's $100,000+ in order to make that renovation.
Right.
And when you're a drive in movie theater and if you're only open for a couple seasons a year, you can't probably afford that. And Ren talks about it a little bit in the book.
Yeah.
But this Mahoning Drive-In movie theater was showing first-run films and then couldn't afford to move forward with the renovation and said, well, we're just going to serve folk who want to come and see old movies still on film. And so they do really wonderful. They do like Disney Sunday sing-alongs. They do like campy horror films. They do slasher weekend, like just really, really
Yeah.
fun things. I went to a Tom Hanks marathon there one weekend. But weirdly,
Yeah.
they're entirely volunteer based, so
Right.
there's no employees at this drive-in movie theater.
Right.
And at some point, while I was working on this book, like pretty far after I had written it, and no spoilers really, but
Mhm.
a solar farm was trying to buy the land out from underneath the drive-in, and because the owner of this drive-in did not own the land, was kind of renting it.
Oh.
They were basically like, "You're shutting down. We're putting the solar farm up. That's the end of discussion." And because this drive-in movie theater, actually people come from far and wide. I mean, I read an article, I think there's actually a documentary about this drive-in, but I read an article where one volunteer came like from Rhode Island every weekend, slept in the concession
Oh my
stand
God.
just to be there. And so it's a really special place to some people, and they rallied. They had a rally, they walked to the town hall, they made their case for why the drive-in needed to stay there, and the solar farm ended up saying, "You know what, forget it, we'll go somewhere else. You please have your land." And of course, the person that owned the land was not very happy about this, because he was probably going to make a
Yeah.
good payday off of that. But it very eerily mirrors some of the
Yes.
events of Never Been Kissed. And also, ironically, the closest drive-in to me is up for sale for the first time in maybe 35, 40 years.
Wow.
And so I'm hoping they find an owner who wants to keep it going so I can keep going.
Yeah, I think you need to buy it.
I know. Well, if we sell lots and lots of copies of Never Been Kissed, I certainly will.
According to your bio, you have a self-appointed certificate in rom-com studies. What are your top 3 favorite rom-coms?
You've Got Mail,
Mhm.
Notting Hill, and 13 Going on 30.
You
Yeah.
had that at the ready, that top 3.
Well, I have to always have a Nora Ephron film in there. Notting Hill
Mhm.
is my favorite because young Hugh Grant is my favorite.
Mhm.
And 13 Going on 30, I'm writing a spin on it, but also that was one of the movies I remember watching. Probably it was like 5 or 6. It was the first time I recognized, like, oh, I'm watching a romantic comedy. These people are falling in love. Like, it was the first time that I had a
Right.
cognizant kind of realization of that. And so it just kind of imprinted on me. And I've probably seen that movie like 100 times.
Chompin' at the Bit, okay,
Mhm.
is the zombie movie mentioned in Never Been Kissed. So, Chompin' at the Bit is this 70s horror film that was directed by Alice, who's a recluse, kind of like Norma Desmond. Was that kind of like the okay? So Ren goes to Alice because he wants to give the movie the premiere night it never got. So he gets to know her, and Chompin' at the Bit is the zombie movie that Alice wrote that never got released. Chompin' at the Bit, are you planning to write that? Write that as a novel, because I thought Chompin' at the Bit sounded awesome. I am a fan of horror films, and this one seemed layered and emotional, and I would watch it. So, would you either write a screenplay or write the novel of Chompin' at the Bit?
I don't have plans to, but I think that would be a really fun experiment for me. I had not even, I always think to myself, like, I was like, I made my
Mhm.
job so much harder by making this fake movie, because not only do I have to write a
Yes.
book, but I have to write a fake movie within the book. And if readers read Matthew Prince, there's a fake book series in there as well. But Chomping at the Bit, my editor had actually commented very early on, and she was like, "Where is this? Like, I need more of this. Like, I just want to know." And at the launch event for Never Been Kissed, readers were like, "I
Mhm.
want to know more about Alice. Like, how do we find out
Yes.
more about Alice?" And really, her character was maybe 1 or 2 scenes in a synopsis that I had originally written for
Okay.
my pitch.
Right.
And the more, as you mentioned earlier, character speaking to you, the more I wrote her, the more I just wanted to spend time with her. And so
Yeah.
she just kept taking up more and more page space. But I spent a lot of time watching films from female directors from the 1970s, more so independent films, and learning about their techniques and how they got these movies made and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But the other thing that I learned about drive-in movie theaters in the 1970s was that a lot of the movies they were showing were exploitation films, which were like B-level horror movies. And so it made a lot of sense to me that Alice had grown up in this town, went to this drive-in, was kind of enamored with this body horror.
Mhm.
Also, I learned that a lot of queer women and queer folk in general use horror as a mode of
Yes.
expression. And so it made
Mm.
sense to me, as this queer woman who wasn't quite certain about her identity would have written this story to kind of work through her feelings and her trauma and her
Yeah.
life experience.
Yeah. It's a great it's a great thread of the story that this Alice and the chomping at the bit. And what's interesting is that I mean it's really clever because it's chomp and it's zombie, but I didn't get that at first. I was like, oh, chomping at the bit sounds like an old timey black and white movie with like a starlet trying to make it. So she's like chomping at the bit for success. Like this is what and then I was like, oh wait, it's a zombie movie. Chomp. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But I also feel like subconsciously you meant it in that old timey chomping at the bit. I'm going to rise to the top sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I didn't think of that, but subconsciously I very well could have. And I think one of the things that I loved most when I finished the book and got to kind of
Mm-hmm.
reflect on it and talk to
Yeah.
people about it was that like not only was her movie about second chances, and not only is Ren getting a second chance, but
Yes.
he's basically giving her a happy ending too by like
Mm-hmm.
getting to rewrite this kind of really
Right.
horrific traumatic experience she had to go through
Yeah.
twice. And I do think she would have been a success. And I would love to write more of her to see like what happens with her post the epilogue of Never Been
Yeah.
Kissed.
There's a thing that I recently learned and I can't let go. It's called an author surrogate. So it's the character in a story that represents the author, whether it's their views or philosophies about life. So as I was reading Alice, I said, I think she might be the author surrogate for Timothy and his views on movie making and movies today versus movies then. Did I just make that up?
No, I mean, I think what's super interesting about that thought, and especially in some of the questions that I've gotten in other
Mhm.
interviews where people have asked me, like, oh, who's your favorite character to write? Who's your
Yeah.
favorite character to write? And I say, oh, it's always so bad because I know I wrote a romance and I know she's not part of the central romance,
Hmm.
but Alice Kelly was my favorite character to write. And I do think she has a lot of my
Hmm.
worldviews, but I also think what she has is kind of a curmudgeonly she's prickly. I think Ren refers to her as a cactus. She's like prickly on the
Yes.
outside, but she's
Hmm.
got more on the inside. And I had so much fun writing her because she is kind of maybe a part of myself that I suppress.
Okay.
Yeah, that curmudgeonly prickliness
Yeah.
that is really not sociable, but she's of a certain age, has been alone for so long, has
Right.
been living
Yeah.
this life that she's just like, well, this is who I am authentically, and I think
Hmm.
she shows her true colors throughout the book. But she really does. I mean, I wrote her as a mentor character for Ren. I
Yeah.
think Ren would never have gotten his happy ending if he hadn't have met her, and
Right.
she wouldn't have gotten her happy ending if she hadn't have met him.
Yeah.
So,
I actually, at one point, I thought Alice is like a Mr. Miyagi. Like
mhm.
she's also getting friend to do like all the housework and to help renovate her house. I was like, this is like she's Miyagiing him. Like
Mhm.
that's how I.
Yeah, I mean, she's basically what I kind of loved is that, we didn't in my original synopsis, that really wasn't a big portion of the plot. And then I wanted to see more of her and I was like, well, how do I get these two guys into her house? Because she's not going anywhere, right? Like
Right.
and that's just what my brain decided was happening. And I think what's so interesting is that she sees so clearly what's happening between the two of
Hmm.
them from the beginning,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, she's not interested in love, she's not interested in people, she just wants to be in her house, like whatever, and they can't see it. And I think that is, but yeah, she's definitely a mentor, a Miyagi mentor for Ren, and kind of she also gets him his dream, right? He's going to get
Yeah.
to have a whole life with
Hmm.
movies by the end of the book
Oh yeah.
because of her. I always feel a little bit like a fraud when I answer this question because
Mm.
I came from reading exclusively YA novels.
Okay.
I mean, I'm 25 now, so I was reading YA novels. When I was
Mhm.
probably like 9, 10. I wanted to read YA romance,
Mhm.
and so I remember reading a lot of Jennifer E. Smith books
Okay.
when I was younger. Meg Cabot
Yeah.
books like that. And it actually wasn't until the pandemic that I picked up my first adult romance novel.
Oh, okay.
And so I read Talia Hibbard's Get a Life, Chloe Brown.
Uh-huh.
And then I obviously read all the Brown sisters
Mhm.
and Emily Henry's Beach Read. And so those were my two kind of
Okay.
introductions into the world of adult romance,
Oh,
which
nice.
I and now, I mean, my mind is blown and the doors have flown off the hinges, and
Oh,
now
yeah.
I'm reading widely and far. But I think those two authors specifically are a great introduction to contemporary romance, because Talia Hibbert brings a humor that is completely unmatched by any other author working right now. And she does the dual POV so beautifully. And Emily Henry, having come from YA novels, kind of matches a little bit more of the style that I brought to Never Been Kissed and Matthew Prince, which is this single POV romance, where we're getting like this personal arc and a romance arc that kind of just keep intertwining and helixing as the story grows.
Yeah, I enjoy your voice. Your voice. Like, as I'm reading, I was like, okay, I think Timothy's a cool guy. I would probably get along with him.
Well, we're getting along right now, so
are we?
I don't know. We can cut the interview now.
Would you like to set up why I chose Two Truths and a Lie?
Sure, yeah. So in Never Been Kissed, Ren and Derek have kind of a standing game of two truths and a lie. They were peer leadership co-leaders. And for anyone listening who's not familiar with peer leadership, it's something that was a big part of my high school experience, which was when seniors basically are tasked with going to either like the freshman class or going to like middle school and trying to like build up social skills and confidence and do community service and kind of help younger kids acclimate to what high school is going to be like. And so the two of them are really familiar with icebreaker games. And as a way of kind of breaking the ice between each other, they will often play Two Truths and a Lie. And so it comes up a couple times across the book here as kind of a nugget of who they were before they went away to college and were estranged, and now have to relearn each other essentially in the present tense.
Yes, I love it.
In high school, I used to work at an ice cream shop. My favorite holiday is Halloween, and Taylor Swift used to follow me on Tumblr.
Someone who's less experienced in the game would say, oh, Taylor Swift, that's got it. But you know what? That would be a good one to include, because you figure I'd be like, oh, that's a lie, but it's true. Although Tumblr, that was okay. Ice cream shop. See, I feel like you were a little shifty when you mentioned the ice cream. You said you worked at an ice cream store? Is that what you said?
Yep, in high school.
And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I felt like you were a little shifty. I'm gonna go with the and what was the second one again? It was
my favorite holiday is Halloween.
Maybe. And then you just made a face when I said I think you were shifty with the ice cream. So either you're saying, wow, she's really good at this game, or I want to throw her off. All right, you know what? I'm going to say the lie is that you worked at an ice cream shop.
No. My favorite holiday is Christmas.
Oh my God. Why didn't I think of that? Okay.
I was afraid it was too obvious because, I mean, I wrote a whole Christmas novel. I mean, I was afraid. No, Taylor Swift did follow me on Tumblr. I used to run a fan blog in high school dedicated entirely to her. And Tumblr doesn't really exist anymore, so that's why I said she used to follow me, because it's kind of fell to the wayside. And I did. I worked at a Carvel ice cream for not most of high school, but for quite a while. Okay,
now it's my turn. After graduating college, I went to Club Med in the Bahamas and developed really bad sun poisoning. In college, I created a sex survey for a pretend psychology class and handed it out to students on campus. My first job out of college was a production assistant at a public access TV station in Westchester, New York.
I'm like wondering if there are nuggets of truth in all of those statements, because that's kind of what I was getting, that there might be a nugget of truth in all of them, but there's a specific detail in them. The sex survey, I would 100% believe you did that. That feels like a truth to me.
What about me makes you think I would do that?
I just think that someone who runs a romance podcast would have had kind of the proclivity to do that.
Okay.
The sun poisoning is interesting to me because that sounds very serious and you sounded very casual about it. I don't know why, but I have to go with the public access TV station. And I for some reason, think it just wasn't in Westchester, New York.
Okay. Well, Timothy, you are impressive. You are correct. That is the lie. That's totally false on every.
Oh, on every level.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
on every level. Yeah. I wanted to work. I went to college hoping to write for television or work at a television station, but I never did. My brother, actually, there is truth. That was my brother. My brother's the one who worked at a public access, like a local television station in Westchester. Yeah. So actually, I guess it was true because it was my brother, but not me. I did do a fake sex survey. And I told everyone it was for my friend's psychology class because everyone knew on campus that psychology students were always doing surveys.
Yep.
But so it was, I kind of like utilized that. And I said, oh, this is for my friend's, psychology class. So what I did was I earmarked all the ones of the guys I liked.
Okay, I love this. All right.
And first of all, this was a horrible abuse of like power and it was really quite awful. But
Crafty.
and I did it for my friends, like the guys they liked. And I said, here's the dossier on, this guy. And then one of my friends was like, oh, this feels wrong. I don't want any part of it. And then it kind of took all the fun out of it. I was like, yeah, you're right. And then I just like threw him out.
Wow. You had all that power and you just let it go. I feel like you just told me an entire romance novel plot in that short.
Right?
That's, I mean, completely up the alley of a romance protagonist to do that.
What? That's for you. That is my gift to you, Timothy. This has been a delight. Thank you so much for making time to join me here on Reader Seeks Romance.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.